Hello everyone and welcome to episode 22 of the Lookout Surf 40k podcast, a Warhammer 40,000 podcast made, produced, developed by an assortment of people, but mostly the three people that are here with me right now. That being me, Dan, hello, yes that is me, and joined as ever by my good buddy, Phil.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. How you doing, Phil? The wondrous world of hobby been treating you well of late?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. It's been keeping me busy.
Yeah, what you been working on, mate?
I've done, I think, 3 things in the last few weeks. One of them is I've been selling my kind of converted Conqueror cannon turret.
God, listen to this. Not that I want to introduce Joe straight away, but listen to this, Joe. He's doing a plug straight off the bat. Straight off the back with a plug.
We're just an accessory to him now. That's all we are.
Well, you wanted to hear what I was up to, and that's what I've been pretty busy doing, because I've been busy casting up resin pieces and all that sort of stuff. So that was one thing that I've done.
So you were making resin pieces for, what was it, Lehman Russ custom kit things that you do?
Yeah, so it's a custom turret, well, a custom cannon that can mount on the Forge Worlds Mars Alpha turrets. I think you can make it work with the regular Games Workshop turret, but you've got to cut some bits out of the plastic. It's not as plug and play as the Forge World one. So I did that. Well, I've been working on that project for the last few months. If not a bit long, but it's finally out in the wild, which is good.
It's pretty cool.
It looks really good. So I've done a painted up version. And then I painted up my Tank Commander with a bit more detail to go with it.
There you go. Is that the one that got lots and lots of likes on Instagram?
Yeah, that was a bit crazy. So it had a little map detail on it, and I posted a photo of that up on like Facebook and Instagram, and got a crazy number of likes and retweets and all sorts of stuff on that. So that was kind of cool that people were interested. So I've got to do a tutorial video for that.
Of course you do.
Yeah. And then the other 2 things that I've done, I kind of converted up the Dark Disciples that came with the Chaos Dark Apostle kits. Because they're perfect for my inquisitorial retinue. So basically, and they didn't really require too much work actually. Just shaving off a few chaos stars and adding on inquisitorial seal here and there, and that was sort of it, really.
Nice.
And then I also bought a load of halfling stuff for Blood Bowl, obviously, to go with my halfling team that I've got.
Could you not resist the running fella with the squirrel on his face?
Well, so I resisted buying the team because it's like I've already got a team that's all painted up to a really high standard, so I don't need them. Although saying that, I was a bit like, I could actually have really done with the transfers, just to add some of them and the little rim names as well. So like Hefties and Hopefuls and stuff. So they were doing quite good to have added to the base. So if anyone's listening and they've got a spare set of transfers they don't want, let me know. I'll buy someone.
End up with a spare set, Phil. So we'll sort that out afterwards.
Brilliant.
We're going to be starting a Warhammer fantasy roleplay thing at work, just to do on like a Thursday evening. I've chosen to play as a halfling, and my character is based on Coltrane from Gears of War.
Okay.
So he's an ex-sports star. So I'm using, funny to Dan say, is the Squirrel Man with the squirrel on his face.
I don't know if that seems like a Coltrane type character there. I imagine the one with the
he's an ex-sports star who's been injured during play and can no longer play anymore.
What about the dude with like the big plaster over his nose? Wouldn't he have been better?
No. The great thing about the Warhammer role players is that you can choose like a different affinity for things, and mine, when you have to roll for it, like in like D&D games, and I actually end up rolling affinity for animals, so I end up either having the squirrel guy or the guy with the ferret in his pants. So
I think the guy with the ferret in his pants is also a good option potentially, but I mean they're all good options. I mean almost all of them are incredibly good sculpts. I especially like the fact that their footballs are Cornish pasties and sandwiches, which is always a big win. As too is the turn counter with the sausage on a fork, which is superb. That's very cool. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, it's quite funny that Games Workshop are playing up to the fact that they are a terrible team as well. It's quite funny. It's like, buy this team if you want to lose repeatedly.
Well, I think the thing with Blood Bowl is they sort of make a deliberate distinction between that and 40k, where they go the teams aren't balanced. There's a well-known like tier system depending on whether you're doing like league or tournament play as to which are considered the best. But obviously people still have their own personal preferences. And for some reason I got them for punishment because I love me my halflings.
There you go. And obviously we already introduced him, or rather we didn't introduce him, but we started talking to him and or acknowledging his existence. But yeah, Joe's here. How are you, Joe?
I'm good. I've been painting frivolously through my Dark Eldar army.
Your Drakari army?
Yeah, I say frivolously. I've painted a whole Raider and a whole Venom.
I mean, that's two things, man. That's pretty good. Big things as well. Not tiny
problem
little
is,
infantry.
I'm doing the same thing I did last time, and I'm getting all the transports and vehicles done first, because they're the thing that start on the table.
Yeah.
And then infantry come later. But the annoying thing about Dark Eldar is that you have to do them all in sub-assemblies, which is the right pain in the bum.
It is a right pain in the bum. Yeah, no, I can understand. But beyond that, Joe, has the wondrous world of hobby been treating you well? Been doing much of anything at all? Played any tournaments? Done any games?
Me and you played in that doubles event.
Oh god, yeah, we did, didn't we? We did a whole video about that. We came fourth.
We did a good job on that one.
We did, yeah. We won 2, lost 1, which was pretty good given the fact that our army was objectively awful. So that was nice.
Oh, yeah. We found the glories of Quicken on Librarian Dreadnoughts.
Oh, yeah, that was fun. That was good fun.
That's now a thing.
Still better on Mephiston, though. That's the problem.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Librarian Dreadnought is a bad option. A very bad option.
Yeah. I don't know. I did a singles tournament down in Poole on the weekend.
Yes.
And I lost one game, 1-2. So keeping that going.
Nice.
My next plan is their next event, which I think is in September. I'll be taking my Dark Eldar, and I'm hoping to go for the 3 wins. I'm yet to do that on my own, so that's what I want to do next.
They've got the event on August 2nd, actually, don't they? Is it August 2nd or August 3rd? The guys in Poole. Yeah, no, August 3rd. They've got an event.
So that'll be good practice for the GT.
Yeah, that's the week before the GT Heat 2, which we're all going to be doing. So I'm definitely going to be showing my face at that one and trialing out the wonders of my army that I've not yet confirmed exactly what it's going to be. But I'll tell you all about it later on, I imagine. Not later on in this episode, but, listen to future episodes and maybe you'll discover. But yeah, so that sounds pretty cool though, buddy. And has that been helping your ITC rankings performance overall?
It's done me alright, actually. I'm something like 22nd out of all the Deathwatch players in the world, which is quite cool.
Nice, that's alright, isn't it?
I don't know how that's happened, but you've got some big events going on in America at the moment, so I'm probably going to get pushed down quite quickly over the next weeks.
That's still pretty good. I think it's also because you were probably one of the few people that actually play them sort of mono faction.
Yeah, so I kind of got ahead because when the ITC changed over to mono faction, I was already doing mono faction before, so I've had a bit of a head start on the other people.
Yeah, no, that always helps. I mean, I haven't really paid much attention to the ITC stuff, but Joe was nice enough to tell me where I'm ranked in it at the minute, which was quite cool. Given the fact that I've only done 3 ITC affiliated events this year, and irritatingly enough, none of the events... Oh no, one of the events I won was an ITC event, but the other events I've won were not. But yeah, I had this bad habit of winning 2, losing 1, as it were. But usually the first 2 victories were like ridiculously good, and the last one was obviously a smashing on taken on my behalf, I suppose. So yeah, where was I in the end, Joe? Something like 50th or something, wasn't it? Something along those lines.
Yeah, we're doing all right.
50th in all the UK, having not even really tried that hard, is pretty good. Maybe next season I'll actually, put some effort in and see if I can actually do well if I actually try.
Well, it would be nice for us to spend maybe a year trying to go to as many UK events as we can. Try and get those points and see what is achievable without having to travel to America.
That's true. But that would mean I'd have to play the made-up nonsense of ITC, and I'm not a big ITC fan.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I'm currently doing a lot of practice games with my Dark Elder, and I'm doing the ITC missions.
Playing against old Vanguard Tactics man, aren't you?
I'm playing against Steve Box. He's
Box.
He's like my Tuesday night opponent who gives me a solid beating most of the time. Points out all my mistakes, but it's mainly just for learning, getting the hang of Dark Eldar and trying to use them competitively. Trying to find out areas that need improving.
We did
which
talk
there
to.
aren't any.
Or rather, I spoke to Steve on Facebook Messenger the other day about getting him on the show to make some contributions. We set a date, but then unfortunately he wasn't able to attend, and then I didn't manage to sort out a new one. So yeah, if you're listening to this, Steve, which I hope you are, seeing as we're gonna have you on the show at some point, it would be super cool if you were listening. There we go. But yeah, if Steve's listening, we'll sort out another date, mate. Sorry about the mix-up on all that stuff. So we'll get you on sooner or later. And I know no one's going to ask me what I've been doing in the hobby because I'm the guy that asks the questions, generally speaking. So I'm going to sort of, allude to myself. What am I up to? I went to UK Games Expo last weekend, which was interesting. Have either of you two gents been to UK Games Expo ever?
Never.
Never. Okay, fair enough. Well, we're going to talk about most of the news or 40k related news that came out of the UK Games Expo after this in the news segment. But as an event, I highly recommend it. I'm frequently attending, events in the UK, not just for board games, but Comic-Con and video game conventions. I'm always kind of present at those sort of things quite frequently. Throughout the year, and I genuinely was really impressed with how many people actually go to UK Games Expo. I was not expecting that level of footfall and that level of space within the NEC dedicated to just board games and tabletop wargaming, and genuinely blown away by the presence that they achieved at the show and the enthusiasm for all the different forms of the hobby and all the sort of familiar faces you see as you're walking around the hall. It's a really, really amazing thing to check out, and if anyone ever gets the chance, I genuinely recommend going along because it's pretty amazing. So the UK Games Expo was wicked. I got to try out the contrast paints again. Ooh,
cool.
Available for pre-order when this podcast goes out, I understand. The contrast paints, tried them again. I tried painting another Poxwalker in red, just to see how the reds worked. Again, really happy with that. I think you can definitely see a lot of potential for some of the flesh tones and what those opportunities offer. But again, there's many, many people with much more experience than me who will say an awful lot more on the internet should you want to learn about contrast paints. But yeah, another opportunity to try them out, and they're really, really impressive. So that's good for what they do anyway. I mean, I'm not saying that they're a one-stop shop for all things, but definitely very, very good to experience that. I also then ran into a table manufacturer who makes tables for gaming purposes. It would really make sense if I could remember the name of them, because obviously I just spent a lot of money on their gaming tables. I just looked it up. Natural 20 gaming tables. I ran into those guys while I was walking around the hall and may or may not have spent a rather large sum of money on a snazzy new gaming table. Which has been a distant potential prospect for a long time. I've been keenly wanting a gaming table that is made and supplied within the UK because some of the ones I was looking at had quite a lot of US shipping costs associated to them. So finding a really, really high quality, proper kind of carpentry manufactured table that was going to be shipped out from the UK was was pretty cool. And the guys I was chatting to there were actually really lovely. There was a nice fella called Dan, convenient. Never going to forget that name. And yeah, he taught me through the process. And before I knew it, I was handing over quite a large sum of money. And I await the arrival of my Natural 20 gaming table, who I'm not necessarily plugging for any particular reason other than the fact that I felt it necessary to buy a table from them. So I obviously liked it enough that I felt like it's worth talking about. So why not check them out? And maybe, say that Lookout Sir sent you, should you be interested in buying a gaming table yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that large sum of money I gave them might get, retrospectively reduced. I doubt it. But, one can dream, right? One can dream.
Just a bit.
Exactly. Hold my fingers. Or cross my fingers, as it were. But there you go. So that's all the lovely stuff that we've been up to in the general sense. So just to take you through the show and what will happen, we're going to talk about the news. So me, Joe and Phil will talk news, which will mostly be about UK Games Expo and some of the other little things that have taken place. We then wanted to kind of do a bit of a retrospective thing on our experiences and feelings towards Kill Team, because we're really enjoying what's happening with Kill Team now that Commanders and Elites has just come out. Obviously Commanders was out a while ago, and then Arena, and then Elites. So, Kill Team seems like this really, really expansive rule set now, and I'm really enjoying kind of diving into it and seeing what else it has to offer. So we wanted to kind of talk about that, which would be lovely. So let's move on now, if we shall, to the news.
Get your ears ready, chaps, because it's time for the news!
So the first item of news that we want to discuss is the very fact that the Warhammer 40,000 FAQ has received its own FAQ, which is always a wondrous state of affairs, but something that we had always expected probably needed to happen, because it's fair to say there was a lot of confusing elements that occurred once the FAQ had dropped, and all of a sudden we found ourselves with a few new questions. So, yeah, was any of you lads surprised that they had come out with an FAQ so quickly to the FAQ?
Not at all. But I think they made a massive mistake of only printing it on Facebook and in this article. If they'd just gone, we've updated the FAQ, please go and look at it, it would have been fine.
What issue are you seeing as having happened as a result of the way they did it?
It's because when, say you're playing a game and there's someone who hasn't read this article, but they've read the FAQ, and then you'll play it in the middle of a game, say at like an event, and you're like, no, that doesn't work like that anymore, because they FAQ'd the FAQ, and your opponent, thinking you're a madman, will call BS, because no one FAQ'd an FAQ.
I mean, it's a very good point, to be honest with you. It's interesting, actually, because one of the conversations I had with one of the rules writers at Warhammer Fest was, do you not feel like just adjusting points is a cumbersome and ultimately, poorly executed way of balancing your game? And his response was, yes, but, if we release separate data sheets, then you'd have to have loads of extra documentation and things that isn't kind of consolidated in one place, and that wouldn't be good for the hobby, because, ultimately then you'd have to pull up all sorts of extra little bits to kind of, correct these elements. But as it turns out, that's exactly what they've done here, according to you, Joe. Although, are you potentially wrong about this, Joe? Have they not updated the actual FAQs as well?
I haven't read that. I'm just making wild assumptions. But
wow. Okay. Cool. So that entire bold assumptions based on
practice.
Brilliant. Phil, do you want to say something while I check?
So what they've done is they've updated the FAQ documents, so they are updated. But then they've also posted an article on Warhammer Community just to say, here's the highlights, and these are the reasons why we've done them. So it's just a bit of an explanation.
So Joe, you're completely wrong.
So what we're saying here is my total lack of preparation on this subject is struck again. But
good old Joe.
But I am essentially the troll voice of the internet. I am here to represent the uneducated masses.
That's true. And to be fair to you, Joe, and I'm going to leave everything that was just said in completely unedited, because, I was quick to jump on that as well, Joe. I just believed you. I took you at face value and started throwing out the fact that I spoke to someone at an event and, ooh, silly them for saying something. Ooh, as it turns out, I was wrong also. Stop trying to push my agenda. That's the main kind of takeaway from this. But do we think there's any FAQ'd rules within the FAQ of the FAQ that are worth talking about? I remember us talking a little bit about the Overwatch rules and how it affected things like grinding advance or things of that nature. So, is there potentially something that we want to elaborate on there, Phil specifically?
Yeah, so this was one that we talked about, and it effectively, the original FAQ, basically it implied that you can use special abilities that only really affect the shooting phase in Overwatch now. So, for example, Kadia gets reroll ones as a regimental rule, and it only happens in the shooting phase. But the FAQ had explicitly stated that, anything that's for Overwatch, it is the shooting phase. But basically what they did is it was a typo and they left out the word not. So now they say Overwatch attacks explicitly aren't treated as the shooting phase. So all those abilities were for like one or 2 weeks allowed to be used in Overwatch. And now no longer. So it's just basically business as usual. And then I think all the other stuff, it was pretty specific to certain stratagems or codexes. So there's probably not too much point going into those.
So now if you charged into a unit of aggressors, they don't shoot twice. Is that what you're saying?
If they shot twice via a rule that says in the shooting phase they shoot twice, then
if they didn't move in the subsequent movement phase.
Yeah.
That might be a bit of a hit there, Joe, to the might of the aggressor.
Yeah, that's a little bit sad. But the thing about aggressors is that you hope to kill whatever's near you in the shooting phase anyway.
That is true. They are incredibly shooty, aren't they, those things? It's quite an incredible thing to witness.
But yeah, they're still each one's putting out.
Technically didn't move in the shooting phase.
Sorry, say that again, Phil. Joe was rude and interrupted you.
Oh, it depends on the specific wording. Because if it says they get it depends if it's their movement phase and the subsequent shooting phase, which is how the grinding advance rule works, which won't take effect because it's all in your opponent's turn. But if it says something more generic, such as if this model did not move in the previous movement phase, then you can shoot twice in this phase, and it doesn't specify what the phase is, then maybe they could.
Fair enough. So what you're saying is we need to read into the specific examples and make sure that we're observing those specific examples where necessary.
Yeah, but basically, if it could have before, then it probably still could have, and if it couldn't, then it probably won't be able to now.
Well, there you go. All makes sense. Anything else, Joe, that you thought was worth highlighting from the FAQ of the FAQ?
Not particularly on my behalf. I did my usual. Does any of these affect my current armies? No. And
well, there was one that they did talk about Deathwatch, but Deathwatch is now no longer your army.
That's true. That's true. But it is my army. Ooh. Yet another Joe army in the arsenal, as it were. But yeah, so they've clarified that the rapid fire rule still works as normal, which is a wonderful thing to be clarified. It's like, all right, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, no, I mean, overall, I mean, it's good to see it, and it's good to see it clarified in more clarity. So yeah, I am appreciative of that, and I think, as funny as it is to sort of be like, they've FAQ'd an FAQ. At the end of the day, it's actually really good that they do that, because ultimately we all benefit from it, which is a big win. So there you go. So the next thing that happened, as I alluded to in the intro, assuming that anyone listening to this bit actually did indeed listen to the intro, the UK Games Expo happened, and with it a bunch of new announces and updates. None of them, one of them being 40k related, and another one being 40k related technically.
There's two, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Necromunda is part of 40k in a way. I don't know, is it sort of weird though, isn't it? Because isn't it sort of old school rogue trader variant of the universe, or some kind of version thereof, because they've got squats in
Well,
in Necromunda.
I had asked one of the designers that exact question. He basically couldn't answer it because I was saying Carl Jericho is one of the famous characters and existed in the lore, like in Black Library books, in a specific time period. So my assumption is, I was sort of saying to him, does Necromunda exist effectively 200 or 300 years ago in the past, because the timeline has moved forward slightly with the Indominus Crusade? And he basically was like, "Oh, I don't know," which wasn't a helpful answer. I mean, I've not read enough of the. I've had a look through the rule books, but I've not read them in depth, and I don't. From what I gather, I couldn't see any time stuff in there, so it might be in there, and it might specify if it does exist, but. I don't know. It does feel like it's a bit of a alternative dimension, a bit like how Blood Bowl is in a parallel universe to the old world, rather than the Warhammer Fantasy Battle old world. Like I said, because of squats, but then maybe they're just using Necromunda as a plaything sandbox where they can reintroduce this stuff back into 40k without it actually having a knock-on effect within the sort of 40k, game system.
But on the topic of Necromunda, they announced not a new gang as such, because obviously you can't have a gang of law enforcers. They're a squadron, I suppose, a troop, the 9-9 or whatever it is from whatever that show is called again, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh,
there you go.
No.
Or whatever the force was in the Thin Blue Line, as it were, that other comedy show about police officers and so on. But nonetheless, they've announced the existence of a new faction called is it Palanite? Palanite?
Yeah.
Palanite Enforcers, which I'm just going to say it right now, look rubbish, in my opinion. What do you think, Phil?
Do you know what? When I first saw them, I didn't necessarily like. There were elements that I liked. There were elements that I didn't like, and I think I said to you guys, they don't, because I originally thought they were meant to be Adeptus Arbites, but apparently I've looked into it. They're two different things. So enforcers are the local law enforcement that is like owned and run by the Hive lords, lords of the Hive, that keep the gangs in check. Whereas the Adeptus Arbites are much part of the sort of wider Imperium like structure. And deal with things like chaos cultists and uprisings and sort of the more serious stuff. So they're a bit more like the FBI, whereas these guys are a bit more like your local police, beating people up for, stealing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sort of be too unfair about them when I say they look rubbish, but I just wasn't... I think the thing is, within the really rich and beautiful range that is Necromunda now, and it has got an incredible range of miniatures, I think something this kind of uniform, even though I understand why they had to make it uniform, because it is what it is, but I just think it just doesn't really kind of feel right within that universe. And again, obviously, they're not necessarily of that universe, and I can understand why they've gone for that juxtaposition, but I'm just really not that impressed with them. I just think it's like, it's not something I'll be, falling over myself to buy or to add to my collection. I think it's all right. I mean, I need to probably caveat when I say things like it's rubbish. I think that's not entirely fair because, obviously someone put a lot of hard work into this stuff and, it's not without artistic merits in its own funny little ways. I just don't think it's something that... I think a lot of people were obviously looking for that Judge Dredd looking Imperial Arbites type look, and this is something quite different, I suppose. I mean, Joe, what's your opinion on this? Just to see what the contrasting opinions are.
I quite like them. They don't fit Necromunda at all because they've essentially all got Primaris Marine helmets, like copies. I think they'd make a good like stormtrooper kind of thing for like a 40k guard army, like a heavy infantry. Do you remember when I think it was back in like 6th edition, guardsmen could take like heavier armor?
Carapace armor.
Squad. Yeah. This would be like the equivalent of that. I just kind of think they look like a high-tech guard unit.
They're very clean cut, and as I said to you guys before, like they're lacking Imperial eagles or skulls of any kind, which is sort of like the quintessential Imperium aesthetic. So the fact they don't have any of that on them makes them look a bit odd, because it then makes them not look very 40k.
But they're not working for the Imperium, though, are they, in the story?
Well, I think this is why, because originally I was like, oh, why aren't they? But that's the reason why, is because they're part of the hive. It's like the symbol on their chest is sort of like, could be anything, and I bet in the kit you'll get a bunch of different transfers, so you can customize it to a bunch of different, effectively gangs, but they're, enforcer gangs. So I think they made it a bit more generic in that respect, so you can customize it to look how you want it to. I think the color scheme probably doesn't do it justice, because it's all a bit too yellow. So all the armor's yellow. There's loads, and then all the spotlights from the torches and the extra lights that appear on the armor are also yellow, and then the eye lenses are also yellow. So it makes for a very uniform model that looks stunningly painted, but I don't think it gets the right sort of impression of how grim and dark the enforcer gang should be, because these are basically just run up from thugs. Basically, they're like thugs given armor, and the shotguns perhaps for me a bit too high tech. They look a bit like Van Sar-esque. But I guess I can see where they're going with it, and they are growing on me. I think I might pick up a box just to convert into more inquisitorial acolyte models.
I think you'll see a lot of Inc 28 conversions for them and Kill Team conversions.
For sure,
definitely.
I mean, they're a whole gang or squad of Carmines from Gears of War, right? To go back to Joe's Gears of War references from earlier. It's which isn't instinctively a bad thing. I think, again, it wasn't quite what I was hoping for. And, I mean, I'd really like to see what you can potentially achieve with these guys once you do some head swaps and some arm swaps. I think that could actually start to look really interesting. If you started to maybe take some heads off of the Orlok gang or some of the other ones that are doing the rounds and start mixing those in, maybe you'd start to see something really cool. That, initially, I mean, again, it could be a really good torso or kind of sort of central template that you could then start building elements on top of, which is potentially quite cool. But there you go. Sorry.
I was going to say, what I'd really like to see is in the upgrade kits, because Border had always released them, is a riot shield and a sort of mace of some kind, because that's sort of, to me, what a classic enforcer should have. So that's what I'm hoping for.
No, agreed. And then in addition to that as well, they also announced the expansion of Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress Blackstone Fortress Escalation, which looks really cool. So they've added a bunch of dudes from this new Slaves to Darkness range, which I'm guessing are some kind of, somewhere between a cultist and something else chaosy and so on. I mean, has anyone got any more information than I do on that so far?
Well, Slaves to Darkness is a carryover from AOS, isn't it?
From the
and the Slaves to Darkness are all followers of Archaon. So I imagine these are some very devout followers of Abaddon.
Which makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of inspiration from these models that look very similar to the old Chaos Cultist kits that were around in 3rd, 4th edition, the metal ones that they did. I mean, again, they're very, very old kits that I'll probably even struggle to find a picture of if I was to reference them to you right now. But yeah, they did have a bunch of robed, kind of purple robed cultists in the range years and years and years and years ago, unless of course I'm going completely mad and making it up. Joe, please tell me I'm not mad. There were old cultist models once upon a time, right?
I don't remember any. During the 13th Black Crusade, many years ago, they just took steel. I thought they just took Steel Legion metal models and put spikes on their heads.
No, I'm pretty sure. Now I'm trying to find an image of them, and I'm probably going to fail to find them anywhere, aren't I? Because plastic cultists are all the range now, aren't they? So it's like it's going to be hard to find these old models.
What did they use? Like the old plastic Orlok and Goliath models.
Oh, I found them. Here you go. I'll send you guys a picture of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, remember them?
Those look like the old Redemptionist gangers.
Yes, they did, but they aren't those either.
Okay.
They were somewhere between the old Redemptionists and things. As I say, they were like a weird range of really, really old models that kind of were lost to time, I suppose. But they did exist once upon a time. I mean, you could use... what was the other... Not the Redemptionists, it's their house... Cawdor.
There was the rat skins as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, so you could use elements from different kind of Necromunda gangs to make it work, but they did do a specific box set, which I've shared the image with there. But nonetheless, yeah, so they got the Slaves of Darkness, which are looking pretty cool. I like some of the sculpts that they've got there. I think actually there's some really interesting elements. The dude with the massive flamethrower pole thing and the big tusks is a 2 thumbs up, I'd say. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, because they call them Servants of the Abyss and Firebrand. I guess they're Firebrand cultists, I guess.
Oh, okay. So, sorry, they're Servants to the Abyss, not Slaves to Darkness. Have I read
Well,
that
they
wrong?
say both in that. So they say they are the Servants of the Abyss with a brand new set of cultists, led by a literal Firebrand, who's that guy you just mentioned. And then they say... adding to the dizzying diversity of Slaves to Darkness. So I think Slaves to Darkness is the catch-all for things like cultists and traitor guardsmen. And
what happened to that Commissar and Ogrin that they were going to release for Blackstone? Is that being put on the back burner, do we know, or is that being released and I completely missed it?
It hasn't been released yet. I think
I
that'll
don't
come
think
soon.
so,
Yeah, that'll be along. I quite like as well, there's a fella with like a horned helmet with an auto gun over, positioned over his back, and he's carrying an ammo case. And because I love to reference old 80s cartoons, he looks like the pirate captain Hammerhand from Thundercats. So there you go. There's a nice little old 80s cartoon reference that Phil always appreciates me throwing in.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe, just maybe, that'll be a thing to be done. I might take that model and then remove his arm and give him a big power fist and be like, there you go, hammer hand. I won't, muddy the waters by trying to do an impression of it. In fact, I'm just going to put in a little soundbite right now.
A boy and his dog are no match for hammer hand.
And what do you think of the Loyalist guys?
I mean, we spoke about these when they were announced. I can't remember when that was, but they were announced at some American thing. Was it LVO?
It might have been, actually.
Again, but it was announced to be released in a game of their own, like an arena game in America.
Yeah, Combat Arena, wasn't it called?
Yeah. But I just want it for the the Inquisitor lady, but not specifically her, but the little servo skull that's loading her pistol for her. That's just one of the most 40k things ever.
She's a rogue trader, isn't she? Not an Inquisitor.
Oh, okay then.
Yes, yeah, Rogue Trader.
But again, I mean, the two are so closely linked in terms of possibilities. You could definitely run her as an Inquisitor without too much aggro.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the Servitor looks excellent. The Tech Priest looks great. The Sanctioned Psyker, or Primaris Psyker, or Primaris Psyker, whatever you're supposed to say. The Imperial Guard Psyker.
Is it Astropath?
No, because I think it's
it
Sanctioned
just says
Psyker.
Primaris Psyker.
Yeah, because it's got the same weird rod thing that they carry around. Although, unlike the Sanctioned Psykers, this female one seems to have kind of one of those bigger kind of like hood things that I don't think they have, which is kind of more akin to the Magnus. So the Genestealer Cult Magnus look, which is kind of good. Or sorry, Magus, not Magnus. Magnus is a very different thing. I mean, I like them all. The what's the name? Is it a Crusader? What's the name of the
Crusader,
dude?
yeah.
Again, all really good stuff. I mean, this is just a really excellent selection of models that I will definitely be buying because I think, again, I just really, really like all these guys. They look great. So that'll be a definite purchase for me, for sure.
Yeah. Another thing that could be used really well for cultists that was released there was that new Warcry team, the Corvus Cabal. I think they look amazing. Because as anyone who really knows me knows that my favourite computer game ever is BioShock. And they look like the Crazy Crow guys from BioShock Infinite.
They do, yeah. They do.
Yeah. They're just missing a guy running around with a massive casket on his back. And it'd be complete.
I think it wouldn't be particularly hard to add that to one of them, though, right? I mean, or find something that achieves that. But yeah, I mean, they look great. I think, you know, again, not that we don't want to acknowledge the existence of the other things they announced, but yeah, the Warcry stuff is looking absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
As is the Blood Bowl stuff with the new Wood Elf stuff that they're working on, which just looks absolutely fantastic as well. So, yeah, across the board, really, really good series of announcements there. Nothing groundbreaking again, though. It seems that we've come off the back of 2 major events worth of announces, and we're still waiting for that big Abaddon-esque announce to come out of GW. Lots and lots of great stuff. I mean, that's not to say that we don't appreciate all these announcements. We really do, and it's all really exciting. It's just that thing where it's like, come on, where's the next big substantial thing for 40k? You know, I mean, obviously, Chaos Knights. I can't wait to see more on them, but. Yeah, I think, you know, selfishly and quite unfairly, I'm super keen to see what the next Primarch might be or something of that nature. So there you go. But look, I mean, it's all good stuff, right? I mean, it's great that we keep getting these reveals, and that's super awesome. So yeah, that was UK Games Expo. And then if that wasn't enough, they also went on and did a Black Library Live, and where they revealed a whole heap of new stuff. You know, they did a new model for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, so a new troll-slaying monster creature dwarf man is pretty cool.
Not just any old troll slayer. He's Gotrek, who normally comes with Felix, but Felix is not around in the current edition.
I see.
The great thing about him, though, is that it's also Brian Blessed, lest we forget.
That's true.
Well, I mean, that does make it worthy of being talked about. But yeah, I had no idea what was his name? Sorry, Gotrek.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure it's great.
I have it on good authority that in the audiobook, Brian Blessed goes, "Felix is alive!" in his Flash Gordon-esque way. So
brilliant.
Go listen to it just for that one line. And then carry on with life.
But in terms of 40k books and things that they've revealed and started throwing out into the world, so there's is this a new part of the Gaunt's Ghost series? I have to admit I've not really actually read this thoroughly before kind of throwing it out there. What is this, Phil? You know more about this than me.
So the first bit is some artwork to go with I think it's the new. Oh, it's a background book, like an art book, basically, a bit like the Horus Heresy ones. So it's called the Sabbath World's Crusade, and it's a background book with updated new artwork.
I think that's artwork from a very old. Well, I think it was Guns of Tanith. I can't remember. Basically, they go down onto the Shrine World.
So you think this is an old bit of artwork?
This is a new bit of artwork for an old book. So basically, they go and protect the Shrine World, and in doing so, end up releasing the Saint, the new living Saint Sabbatine or Sabbatine, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
So this isn't Celestine, because the wings are different and the haircut looks different.
Yeah, so there's currently 2 saints running around. There's Celestine and Sabbatine.
Oh wow, I didn't realise that.
But she's been around for a lot longer. And it's a really cool book. If you can get hold of the books, I do suggest reading all of them because they're great.
All the books, read them all.
They were like the first book I ever read for Warhammer 40k was Storm of Iron, and then my friend lent me like the first 4 books from Gorse Ghost, and I think I read all of them in about a week and a half.
Wow. I
was just so absorbed by it, and then I've just continuously read them all the way through. And Dan Abnett is much like Game of Thrones. He's not afraid to kill like big characters in it. Obviously, Gaunt lives all the way through because he's the main character, but there's some big players within it that come along, are fan favourites, and then he just snuffs them out. And there have been a few times when I read a line and then I just closed the book and put it down. I was like, no, if I don't read on, it hasn't happened. But it's all part of what they call it, the Danny-verse of Dan Abnett. So he's basically created this whole Sabbath Crusades thing, and there's loads and loads of books within it, not just the Gaunt's Ghost ones. So like Titanicus, that's set within the Sabbath worlds. There's a book called Double Eagle, and that's set within the Sabbath worlds as well. But it's Dan Abnett. He can just write whatever he wants, and Games Workshop will be like, yeah, that's now canon.
Boom. I mean, he pretty much has earned that respect and deserves it, to be fair. He's
easily.
Very good. I mean, there's a lot of 40k books in here that they put out into the public domain, so I'll just run through a load of specific names. So they've done one on Belisarius Cawl, which is cool because, you know, he's one of those weird 40k characters that we're supposed to believe has been there forever and ever and ever, even though no one really actually ever heard of him until now. Although, again, he was in the Horus Heresy books, blah, blah, blah. But it's one of those things, isn't it, where it's like, I always remember when they announced Belisarius Cawl, they did that video teasing this Horus Heresy character is returning, and he's going to be this epic return of a beloved character from the Heresy, and then they went, and it's Belisarius Cawl, and we all went, who? What? I mean, even you, Joe, as an avid reader, was a bit like, sorry, what?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah, he didn't really show up, but then they after they released him, they shoehorned him into Wolfsbane, which is also incredible book about Logan Grimnard going off hunting Horus. But Belisarius Cawl isn't part of that storyline. He's got like a separate storyline that doesn't affect it at all, going on the side. So they've basically gone to the author, can you just like shoehorn in an origin story, but leave it quite open so we can do whatever we want with it in the future?
Yeah. Whoops, we've come up with this new character. He's our MacGuffin for all the stuff. Please make him special. There's also another book called Knights of Macragge, which are obviously about Ultramarines, written by a guy called Nick Kime. And I had to check on Google that that's not the Nick from Warhammer Community, just splooging over Ultramarines as he does on a regular basis. And I was like, oh, they've given him the opportunity to write a book about Ultramarines, have they? Oh, wait, no, it's an actual author. Not that I'm suggesting that Nick couldn't write a fabulous book. Maybe he will one day, but not this one. Then we've obviously got Rites of Passage, which is a book about kind of different dynasties within the whole kind of Imperium. So this is a navigator house, and essentially it's a political tale or something about how this guy rises to power or whatever within that side of things. Then there's a couple Vaults of Terror books, or one Vault of Terror book specifically, the Hollow Mountain. And then
I'm super looking forward to that one because my favourite book was the first Vault of Terror book, which was the Carrion Throne. So this one's got a lot to live up to.
Have you not listened to Guardians of the Throne as well then?
No, because that one is sort of a spin-off from that, and it has a few similar characters, but it's not based around the Inquisitor. I've got it to listen to on Audible, but I'm not around to listening to it yet.
So a load of books on that side of things, and there's also new Warhammer Adventure books. I'm sure everyone's very excited to see. Has the controversy on Warhammer Adventures gone away yet, or do people still hate them?
I think the controversy died as quickly as it started when people realised how silly they were being, because they were like, "We're going to release a series of books for children to get them into the hobby," and everyone's like, "No, that's a stupid idea." And then 10 minutes later, they're like, "Oh, on reflection, that's probably a really good idea." And then Games Workshop turned around and were like, "We're also going to release a series of horror books, just to show you that it's also still about the adult side of things."
It's interesting, isn't it? How, again, I understand the complaints that people had towards Warhammer Adventures in the first instance, because I think people were worried about it being watered down and all this other sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to look at it for what it is, which is a really great entry point for younger readers to get invested in the 40k and Games Workshop hobbies in the broad sense. And this new book about Tau, The Secrets of Tau, it's got some nice artwork on the cover if you like that kind of comic booky style, which I definitely do.
Tau look absolutely terrifying to children.
Absolutely. Although interestingly, they've spelled Tau just T-A-U. There's no apostrophe A-U on it, which is the legal way that you're supposed to write Tau now, according to Games Workshop. So
Tau.
Huh?
Tau.
Yeah. Tau.
Into it.
That's how they made it their own original IP. So I look forward to potentially that, that box shot or that cover artwork being updated at a later date, or maybe they just didn't notice and they're just never going to notice. But or maybe I'm just wrong in the first instance. I should just be quiet about these things. But nonetheless, yeah. So quite a nice series of releases there. Not least, more and more information about the ongoing Horus Heresy Siege of Terror. And some of the other books that are happening around that as well. So The Lost and the Damned, featuring an image of Sanguinius wielding a rather cool looking spear and power sword combo, which is quite a lovely piece of artwork to behold. I have picked up the first of the Siege of Terror books, but I haven't started digesting it just of yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that has in store for me. I haven't read an awful lot of the Horus Heresy, so I'm just literally now skipping to the end and seeing what happens. And then I will try and work it out from there on, I suppose.
I think for anyone getting into Horus Heresy books in general, I think the best thing you can do is just read the first 3 books to know how it begins. And then if you want to read all of them because you're a madman, read all of them or get them on Audible. It's the best way of doing it. But the other way I suggested to people is pick a legion that you like and then listen to all the books about that legion. And then it fills in the blanks of time as you go.
Yeah.
So realistically, you only need to read the first 3, then skip to the end, and you're fine.
I think though as well, the first 3, I think Fulgrim's worth a go. I think that's a really, really good book. And I think Burning of Prospero is also a really, really good book, because again, those are like the key events that kick it off, right? Like you've got to make sure that you understand what happened to Magnus.
I think the best thing, if don't read Burning of Prospero, 1,000 Suns is a lot better.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, from the perspective of the 1,000 Suns, there's a lot more enjoyable, I think.
Okay. But yeah, anyway, nonetheless, that's really cool to see coming along, and looking forward to seeing what happens with all of that. So there you go. So that was the Black Library Live and all the things that went on there. Lots and lots and lots and lots of books, which is really amazing. Lots of things to fuel our hobby interests, and more than we were even able to talk about there. So lots of great stuff coming out there. We recommend you check out the article on that and see what's going on. That article being the one on Warhammer Community. So yeah, give it a look and see what you think. But in addition to all that, they also announced, in celebration of the existence of a new logo, oh yes, they will be celebrating on the 29th of June, which is going to be a in-store celebration, which will feature, amongst many other things, exclusive miniatures that will be sold in stores on the 29th. What do you imagine that might be? Phil, what do you think? What are you hoping for?
Do you know what? I don't know. I imagine, not being ironic at all, a Primaris Lieutenant or something of that ilk. Like a limited edition variant Space Marine model plus a Age of Sigma Stormcast Eternal model of some kind, I guess.
Yeah. It's reasonable to assume that that's what you're going to get out of it, isn't it? Because they love their Stormcast Eternals and they love their Night Haunts and they love their Space Marines. It'd be cool to see something for the Chaos Space Marines, maybe. Maybe like a new Khorne Lord for the World Eaters or something like that would be pretty wicked. I
don't think it'd be anything that specific because it's got to be a generic. I assume it's like only available on this day as like a one-off item, so it can't be anything faction specific.
True.
It's just got to be something generic enough that loads of people will be like, "Oh, I collect Space Marines. I'll pick one up. I collect Stormcast Eternals. I'll pick one up," as opposed to a Chaos, Night Lord's captain.
Well, maybe another Chaos Lord then in that general sense or something of that nature. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, obviously we all know it's just going to be a Space Marine and a Stormcast Eternal. But what Space Marine and what Stormcast Eternal might it be? I'd really appreciate it if they did a captain model rather than the the onslaught of lieutenants that we've been receiving, just because captains are a bit cool. Or maybe a new librarian might be nice, because the one problem with Primaris librarians is they only come in one pose, so it might be cool to get a new pose for a Primaris librarian. I think that could be a win. Obviously they could do a Primaris chaplain, but no one worries about multiples of the Primaris Chaplain because no one even takes one of them, let alone two. So I wouldn't worry too much on that front. Or at least not in a competitive sense. Obviously, I make those comments with regards to that sort of, mindset. But, you may well, collect and enjoy Primaris Chaplains, but that's not the general rule of thumb. But yeah, I mean, it's really exciting though. I mean, that really kind of came out of nowhere, I would say. I mean, they just sort of made an announcement about it. And yeah, I think it's really cool, right?
Yeah, a couple stores haven't had their birthday celebrations recently, and they were like, "Oh, something might be coming up in the future." And then like there was a bunch of store rebrands, and they're like, "Oh, we're not going to have a store reopening party because something else is coming along," but no one really knew what it was. So.
Does this mean that we might be able to buy the Terminator Chaplain at this June 29th event as well?
You'd hope so. And the store opening dice, the first founding dice, are really, really nice if you can get hold of them. Otherwise, it's eBay and a kidney.
I think they were selling those at UK Games Expo, actually.
What?
I think so. You're talking about the metal dice, right?
No, they're plastic. They come in the tin of 20.
Oh, they were selling the metal dice. Yeah, they were selling the metal dice. They were also selling the metal, not the metal, but the dice tray, which I picked up and bought because I wasn't able to get it at Warhammer Fest. And I walked to the till and I was like, "One of those, please." And they turned around to me and said, "Yes, that's £30." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what? £30? Oh, God." But such is my addiction, I still bought it anyway. I was like, "Oh yeah, well, fair enough. I've come this far." But yeah, £30 was a lot for a dice tray. Good lord.
Did you get the sexy objectives as well?
I did, absolutely. Those weren't cheap either. So there you go. Glutton for punishment, me.
Yeah.
I just love giving Games Workshop my money. I'm a fool.
They've inserted that chip in your head, and they really just set it off whenever necessary.
They got me early on in life, and I just there's no helping me anymore. But there you go. I reckon that pretty much wraps up all of the news topics for this week, unless I've missed anything. There was rules within Horus Heresy for the new Fancy Knight with the big guns, but that's a very Horus Heresy specific rule set, which is only referencing to the older sort of 7th edition things. And given the fact that we focus mostly on 8th edition modern 40k, didn't necessarily seem relevant to talk about it. But if you are into Horus Heresy, be aware that they have released rules for the model that I actually thought was pretty cool, but I think I was told wasn't by my colleagues here. I don't know, Phil, have you come around to the new Knight? What's it called?
No, I looked at the design of it, though, from the previous year where they previewed it, and it actually has changed quite substantially, but I'm still not a huge fan of it. I think what's more interesting, though, is the fact that they haven't released 40k rules for it. So I think the absence of the rules kind of implies something you could maybe read into, but who knows what they're actually going to do.
Do you think so? Do you think it's just the case of that, you know, the Games Workshop team were taken by surprise because they don't really get to see this sort of stuff coming out of Forge World in the same way that Forge World don't get to see what Games Workshop are doing, and they just haven't got around to...
I wouldn't have thought so. Not now that 40k is all one department. You know, maybe they've kept it under wraps, the Forge World people, and they've just dealt with it with the Horus Heresy, but... It seems like once a model gets finished, or before it gets finished, it gets passed on to the 40k team. It's like, this is a thing, you can now do something with it. So I imagine they've gone, brilliant, we're not going to release free rules, we're going to, you know, wait around and stick it in some book of some kind.
They're too busy trying to retrospectively fix the beta rules that they wrote for those ridiculous Custodes tanks that everyone's taking now.
Well, yeah, they'll have to do that at some point, yeah.
I mean, those things are crazy, right? Has anyone actually taken the time to read those rules and actually process how mad those things are?
All I know is they reduce your charge by 2 inches if you do try and charge them.
Yeah, well, 2 inches, plus I think there's a stratagem where you can add D6 to that.
Oh, yeah, Tanglefoot grenades.
Yeah, so you can Tanglefoot grenade them, and then they are D6 plus 2. They're toughness 8, I think. They're horrible for the fact that they're like 250 points or south of that. They're just bonkers. I expect that every one of us who's playing at the Grand Tournament Heat 2, when we get round to it, we'll have a fun time playing against those fairly frequently if we do well in the early games, because they're going to be really, really heavily featured. Unless, of course, Games Workshop get around to nerfing them by then. I have to be honest, I'm kind of hopeful that actually happens, because I think they are getting a lot of exposure, and I think they're going to see that at GT Heat 1 when it comes around, which I think is actually next weekend, isn't it?
It is relatively soon.
Yeah, so that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on that.
Forge World have been teasing an Imperial Armour book for ages now, so it's got to be soon, surely.
Oh, so what, you think this big knight could be in there?
Yeah, I reckon they'll release an Imperial Armour book for everyone.
That would be lovely if they did.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that all said, guys, I reckon that wraps up the news. So let's move on now to the next segment with the traditional transitional noise. And welcome back, everyone. Here we're going to talk about Kill Team, because ultimately Kill Team Elite came out not too long ago now, roughly a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something in that ballpark. Certainly only a few weeks or a couple of weeks from the moment of recording, which is today, the 30th of May. So we're going to talk about Kill Team. It's approaching a year, although we're still a couple months off from that. We're all under the impression that Kill Team, the new version of it anyway, launched in July of 2018. That's about what we reckon, isn't it, Phil?
That's what the internet tells us, so it must be true.
Exactly. You cannot fault the internet, for it knows all, or even most things. But yes, all the information points towards it coming up to a year. But lots of different things have come out for Kill Team, which is super awesome. I think ultimately, when we look at the release of Kill Team and what it represents for the overall hobby, the entry point, I think it's a really great place for people to begin their journey into the wondrous world of 40k. But we just wanted to talk about our general impressions of it, the addition of Kill Team Elites, and, where we think the ongoing future of Kill Team lies. So, Phil, what's your broad impression of Kill Team up to the point? Are you still a super, super fan? Oh, actually, pausing to point out the fact that Joe's here as well. Hello, Joe.
Hello, me.
There you go. Joe's always about. But yeah, Phil, what's your broad impression of Kill Team up to this point? You were a big fan at first. Are you still a big fan now?
I am, actually, and I've got 2 local friends in Oxford. I sort of roped them into playing Kill Team. Before that, they were super into Blood Bowl, and I was like, play some 40k. But 40k is too big, and it's a bit too much of, like I said, a bit too much of a barrier to entry. They don't really want to have to buy a ton of models, and I don't even have a table space in my house to play 40k. It's too big. But Kill Team fits nicely on that slightly smaller table in my kitchen, so I can actually play some Kill Team and play some games with them. So that's what I've been doing from time to time. I haven't done a huge amount. I think last game was maybe a couple of months ago. Haven't done Commanders, haven't done Arena, I haven't done Elites. Elite seems a bit more interesting than the other 2. I mean, Commanders does interest me as well, but I don't know. I'd rather it was just a book rather than a box with a book and some stuff.
Did you hear that though, Joe? I mean, one of the most alarming things that Phil brought to our attention there is that he's got other friends other than us.
Yeah, that is a disappointing fact to hear. I don't like sharing at the best of times. And I don't get to see you very often, Bill. But I like the idea that you're just sat there in a darkened room, waiting, just on a chair.
Waiting for the next podcast recording date to come round. He does nothing.
I just sit in the corner for two weeks until the next time we chat.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, that's how we like to believe it, Phil. But no, I mean, look, all that stuff about the game side of things makes a lot of sense. I have purchased every version of Kill Team.
Because I forgot about Rogue Trader.
Well, then I was going to say, because Rogue Trader, most of Rogue Trader's rules have kind of been swallowed up into Arena and, not so much Commander. I mean, Kill Team Rogue Trader still has some elements that are unique to it, but they're not massively unique now, given the fact that Arena already then offers rules or expands on the rules for battling in indoor locations. Or the thing is with Arena is obviously it's their attempt at turning it into a more competitive system, which is really good to see, because I think Arenas actually does do a lot to circumnavigate certain benefits that very kind of strong kill teams were getting. But yeah, I think overall, it's amazing the volume of releases that they've managed to put out for Kill Team. And when you think Kill Team now is made up of essentially, so it's Kill Team, Rogue Trader technically, Commanders and Elites. And so Kill Team, Rogue Trader, Commanders, Elite, and Arena. So it's a 5-book system, and that's not even accounting for all the weird wibbly rules that come in the individual box sets for different kill zones, different command benefits, different things. It's fair to say it's not the most comprehensively, not necessarily not comprehensively, but it's not the easiest thing to collect. Like you need a lot of stuff, or you need to buy a lot of different stuff to get the full rule set. Even someone like myself who's bought all 5 books doesn't own every rule for Kill Team because of the way that they've distributed those throughout boxes.
I sort of think that's the point, though, and it's meant to be a sort of pick and choose system where if you just want to play the cool Kill Team game, which is what I've got, then I'm quite happy to just play that. I don't need to buy any of those other things to enjoy the game, but if I do want to expand it with Commandos or Elites, I can do. I think Rogue Trader is an interesting one because it's sort of like a standalone game on its own and doesn't actually need Kill Team to play. Like it just feels like that's just a completely different thing from Kill Team.
It was like their practice ground to see if people wanted a narrative game or even like a test bed for what's it called? The playing all on one level.
Well, a bit
Kill
like
Team
Arena.
Yeah, it's like how much better would this game be if it was all on one level in a ship, for instance? And also, it's the only game that allows anyone to play with demons, which is another weird one, which I'm discovering at the moment.
Sorry, what was that? The only game that what?
The only game that allows demons in Kill Team.
Is that?
Well, because there's not a demon kill team. There's just chaos, isn't there? Or
there's no
chaos.
There's no rules for running any demons within the game. The only way around it is if you use plague bearers, but run them as the Gellerpox infected, which are basically plague bearers. But there's no rules for things like bloodletters.
I had no idea. I suppose because I'd never been interested in running demons in Kill Team, it never occurred to me to think that they weren't there.
It sort of makes sense though. Like narratively, they're not particularly surgical strike units, are they?
Yeah.
In the way that all the other kill teams are designed.
But the way, if you look at it as something like Rogue Trader, is that you still have weird little demonic incursions where like a couple manage to slip through onto a ship, for instance. And also you got to think like Grey Knights are a big factor within Kill Team. But they have nothing to fight against. And they even have stratagems to deal with demons.
That's interesting. Maybe they're still going to add them, but they just haven't got around to it yet.
Do Chaos have access to... I've got the book here, actually. I should look. But do Chaos have access to Possessed, maybe?
No, pure Chaos Marines just get cultists, and that's it.
Let me just refer to the Chaos section.
One of my guys is... I was running my Apostles of Thalos, which is effectively my renegade militia army as Chaos Cultists.
I'm looking now. You do get Possessed, though, now. So, in the Elites book, you get access to Possessed. There's no Obliterators or anything like that.
There's no Greater Possessed either, which I find a little bit weird. Because...
Oh, no, there is. Greater Possessed is a command option.
Oh, okay, yeah, because they... all the Space Marine half of Shadow Spear managed to make it in to Kill Team, but like most of the Chaos stuff didn't. But
well, they've got Greater Possessed. They've got what else have they got here? They've got Greater Possessed. They've got Dark Apostle, Master of Possession, Sorcerer and Terminator armor, Chaos Lord and Terminator, Corn Berserkers, Possessed Terminators. That's your lot, yeah. So they don't have Obliterators or things like that. But obviously Chaos Space Marines are in there and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And the other weird one that some people have access to and some don't, and we need to double check this, seeing as there's two of us with books in our hands, is that bog standard Space Marines have access to Assault Marines. But Death Watch don't, which I always found a little bit weird.
What, the Death Watch don't get Assault Marines?
Well, Space Marines can use Vanguard veterans. It says so Space Marines and Dark Angels cannot be Stoneguard veterans, Stoneguard gunners, Stoneguard veterans, Vanguard veterans, or Vanguard sergeants.
Okay.
Which is weird. Is they're like, you people can't have this, but Blood Angels can.
Yeah, but would you say, I mean, obviously, Vanguards are part of the Death Watch, but would you say that those are, even within the Death Watch, right, what is a Vanguard Space Marine with Jump Pack got, or rather, what does a Death Watch variant of that have over a regular one? The answer is nothing, right? I mean, maybe it gets special issue ammunition, but I don't even think the Vanguards ever had that, even in the Death Watch book, maybe.
They do on their pistols.
Yeah, if they do.
I think the only reason why I don't have them is just because there isn't a Death Watch like box set of those in. Like they basically sell the Deathwatch kill team, and you don't get them in that, do you? So I think that's like kill team is very prescriptive, and it's basically if it has a model and it's in a box, it's got a rule, and if it's like an upgrade that they would have in 40k, but they just don't have it in the box,
Okay.
it doesn't appear in kill team.
I have just discovered that there's a special rule that says Aquila kill team. When you add a captain in Terminator armor, chaplain, librarian in Terminator armor, Terminator, or a veteran, which must be a Vanguard veteran equipped with jump pack to your command roster, you can choose it to have the Deathwatch faction keyword instead of Adeptus Astartes. So that's fine.
So you're actually getting the rules wrong here live on the podcast, Jay.
And if you do so, it gains special ammunition ability.
Ooh, fancy. There you go.
So yeah, it is wrong. But yeah, I do find it weird that some Space Marines can have Assault Marines and some can't. And
You just said they all can.
Well, they can't.
Well, which ones can't now?
Can't.
What? Which ones?
Dark Angels and Space Wolves can't.
Yeah, they can.
It doesn't say they can. It specifically says they can't.
Oh.
In the veterans section, it says Space Wolves and Dark Angels models cannot be Stern Guard veterans, Stern Guard gunners, Vanguard veterans, or Vanguard sergeants.
Oh. Well, that's me told. Fair enough.
And then, but they're one of the few people that have a jump option as well. Which I find a little bit weird, because that's super powerful in Kill Team, having someone that can essentially jump half of the board.
Yeah, no, it's super useful. I mean, especially with the overemphasis on, the verticality of the terrain within the game. I mean, obviously, when they launched it, they released it with the Sector Imperialis range of terrain. And obviously, that brought about a lot more altitude, I suppose, to the size of the game. I mean, it took the space between levels from Cities of Death, or whatever they were called. Was it Cities of Death was the old terrain, and then it moved to this Sector Imperialis, and the difference in distance between floors went from 3 inches to like 5 and a bit. So having someone that can ignore those vertical distances is pretty massive in a game that has a lot of emphasis on vertical terrain, I suppose.
It's like Necrons have access to the Praetorians, and Tyranids have Raveners, but that's about it really for fast-moving units.
Well, they don't need an awful lot of fast moving units purely because the boards are so much smaller. So I think there's a lot of emphasis in deliberately having units that don't just jump across an entire board in one move.
Yeah, plus also as well, you're very rarely gonna have a situation, because of the nature of the game, where you're going to be finding yourselves in like a turn 1 charge situation, because you need to declare the charges in the movement phase, right? And that's still then reduced to a 2d6 roll regardless of your movement characteristics. So the likelihood of that being an issue is lessened by the you go, I go, or more specifically I move, you move type of thing. I suppose you can always find yourself putting yourself in harm's way and them choosing to charge you in their corresponding movement. But, that's no more or no less than the possibility. I mean, if anything, actually, it's quite a bizarre thing, because obviously that super fast movement could compel you to run forwards and potentially find yourself being charged in response, and that's not an ideal situation by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, there's a bit of a downside, because obviously the rest of the game in terms of shooting is, you take alternate actions, and, you both take turns with different units, but the movement phase is you do all of your models and then they do theirs. And actually, if you go first, you're quite often at a disadvantage, especially if you're ideally wanting to charge them, because you've got to make that an initial move towards them, so you might be out of range, whereas actually if it was alternating like the rest of the phases, some of their models might come a bit closer to you, so you could then charge them. And quite often they can just be like, oh, okay, you charge them, and they'll be like, okay, I'm just going to fall back or something in their movement phase, and then you're just sort of stuck out in the open. So there are some odd
Well, you're not allowed to disengage from a successful charge if it was a successful charge. So if your opponent charges you, you're not allowed to fall back from that until the battle round's been resolved. So you can't be in a situation where if you've successfully charged, your opponent walks away from you because they're not allowed to. I don't even think they're allowed to pistol shoot you in the corresponding shooting phase, or maybe they are.
No, they can't, because we did that in our very first few games, and I was getting really lucky and killing all of Tim's gene stealers in the shooting phase, because I was like, well, I've got pistols, so I can shoot. And then actually we realised, this was literally our very first game in Kill Team, and we realised you can't shoot your pistols in the turn that you've been charged, basically. Yeah. So it's in subsequent rounds of shooting you can if you're still in combat.
I suppose that's one of the interesting elements of the game system, though, right? Is that, again, they've obviously recognised that charging as is has created a dynamic where you ultimately need to kind of neutralise your opponent's ongoing, activations, as it were. Which I guess adds a tactical nuance to the whole thing in and of itself, which again, when I've been playing the game, I've tried to utilise or work around, but I don't think I've gotten close to sort of perfecting that. But yeah, there's a lot of nice nuances to the game. I like that it's a true line of sight game that also uses, more kind of sensible terrain rules. They're not adopting the basic 40k approach. You must be within the terrain and obscured by said terrain. It's very much a case of walls and craters and other things affect your efficiency at shooting, which is good. Overall, I actually really like the system. I think they've come to a good place. I think it needs a small series of tweaks here and there. I think they need to maybe streamline or do a better job of explaining some of the nuances of the early game or before game actions of booby traps and all those other things. I mean, they're not inherently difficult to understand. It's just an extra layer to the game that is a bit kind of, it's a bit kind of not broad. It's a strange element to the whole thing where it's like got to set up all this stuff beforehand, and it's nice that they've added those tactical nuances to it.
Yeah, but I don't mind them. I think they sort of just vary the game a bit. It's the same with the kill zone, sort of random elements. Although some of them are pretty punishing, because I think one of them reduces like halves the shooting range or something silly. But most of them are pretty good, and one of them allows you to use the sort of the sewer system on the board, so you can jump around between the sewage hatches, which is kind of cool. And I think every kill zone obviously has different tables that you can roll on as well, so that adds a lot of variation.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And that is good. Variation is good for certain. And I think that's the interesting thing about Kill Team. Like I said before, it's a lot of different rules, a lot of different options, and a lot of room for creativity. But as an entry point, I mean, Joe, you're probably a man who is more in touch with what goes on in the retail space of small toy soldiers. Would you say that Kill Team has been broadly successful in introducing new players? Have you seen people coming in?
We have a lot of people coming in who just want to play 40k, but then you occasionally get someone coming in and like, oh, I want to start 40k, but I don't want to spend loads of money. And then you're like, well, actually, Kill Team is a great way of doing it, because you can just buy a box of Space Marines or Campbellite Warriors or a unit of Fire Warriors, paint those, play with those, and then add an extra unit at a time, and you can still play a game with your friends and not have to wait like 3 months of paychecks before you can have a usable army. And it also encourages a lot of people to buy terrain, because you always find, like, when someone like gets started with 40k, they're always like, oh, I'm going to buy this massive army. And then like, oh, hang on, I haven't actually got a board or any terrain to play on. And then like, oh, I can only play once a month at my mate's house or at a club. So if you're only spending 20 quid on one box of models, they're a lot more interested in buying that terrain on top. And the terrain kits they've released are great as well.
Yeah, they're like 50 quid, and they're probably the best bargain that you can buy from Games Workshop in terms of the amount of stuff that you get in them. And that's sort of the unfortunate thing with kill zones, is that most of them have sold out and been discontinued. And that sort of highlights the one weird thing with Kill Team is a lot of the stuff are just sort of one and dones. Like, they release them. If you buy them, great. If you don't, but you want to pick them up later, you're sort of stuck because they don't sell them anymore. So if you wanted to get into Kill Team now, you obviously can't buy the original box sets. They may do a year 2 box set. I wouldn't be too surprised. But if you want those original kill zones and those sort of the bargains of terrain, you can't get them anymore. If you want to buy the commanders, like the commander boxes, which had a specific model and a bunch of stratagems and stuff, you can't buy them anymore, or can't buy a lot of them because they've all been discontinued now. Which is a bit of a shame. It seems a bit odd because actually it feels like it's I don't know if the named character commandos had, I presume they had unique rules in them that you can't get anywhere else.
They did.
With all the kill zones, like, you can't. I sort of wish they would release all of those rules somewhere else so we can get them.
That is one of the, and that was sort of what I guess I was getting at earlier when we were talking about the fractured nature of the release. It would be quite nice if they kind of did a much more comprehensive, or gave the option to buy all of the tactical cards or the extra kind of bits in one place. Like, I mean, again, some kind of, like, I don't know, even if it was like this was the 2019 Kill Team season of releases in terms of cards and counters and other bits and pieces, please, just pay 15 quid and you get all these rules, which would be, super useful. Because a lot of people, certainly I found with the Commanders thing, as a long-term 40k player, there wasn't that much that I was doing specifically for Kill Team. Like, Kill Team was just a complementary game to the 40k system, and I owned the armies already, and I'm just like, well, I'm just going to take this, and this, and play Kill Team with it. So I wasn't then going, Commanders, I'm totally going to drop 20 quid or whatever it was on yet another Primaris Captain or another Primaris Librarian or another, Succubus or whatever it was. It was like, well, I already own that model. I'm not going to buy another one just because of these extra bolt-on rules. So I didn't pick up any of the Commanders, because even though I bought the Commander rule set, because any of the kill teams that I wanted, I already owned those models through collecting 40k. I mean, obviously that's not true for everyone who plays Kill Team, but I found that was a bit frustrating because it's like, I really don't want to buy another Primaris Librarian.
Well, what was weird is the kill zones were really good money savers on scenery. The kill teams have a tiny bit of scenery and like the kill team itself, plus tokens and some rules, and they didn't really seem like there's much of a saving in those. If anything, they're a bit more expensive than they're basically more expensive than the kill team as a standalone box set of models. Plus, you get a bit of terrain that quite often you don't necessarily want because it doesn't fit in with your kill zone, because they're all themed to do different kill zones. And then you've sort of it just felt like you're paying extra for some tokens. So I didn't feel like if they were a bit more of a money saver and were like cheaper, then maybe they would have sold better, or I would have potentially gone out and bought them. Like the annoying thing is that, so I was doing my Apostles of Thanos as a Chaos Cultist, so I was running on the space Chaos Space Marines, basically. So the downside with that is, even to this day, they've still not released a Space Marine Kill Team box sets. It's like they've only just released the Death Guard one, and it's like every kill team that has a box set has a bunch of extra stratagems that you can use in addition to the ones that you get in the core game. So right off the bat, like from day one when we were playing, like Joe and Richie were playing Astra Militarum, and the Astra Militarum box was out. So you had all these, what was it, 10 extra stratagems that you could use. And it's like, I had my core 6 stratagems, or 4, I think it was. And so it's like, even now, those players have a sort of numerical advantage because they just have access to more rules that I don't have because they've not released it. So a game that's purely designed around balance, there's still a weird bit of imbalance in terms of the rules.
Yeah. Sorry, and you were referring to Chaos Space Marines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Because again, I didn't know if you... when I listened back, I seems foolish for pointing this out, but it sounded like you were talking about regular Marines, which obviously had their...
No, yeah, I should say heretical Astartes by the correct name.
But weirdly, the guard box they did with the Scions was probably the best value for money out of all the ones they did. Mainly because it came with the 2 shipping containers, which could be used on any box.
Yeah.
Because the ones they release at the moment, obviously, they're designed to go with a specific kill zone. So, for instance, they did the really cool Frontier one with Genestealer, Cult, and Mechanicum, which is all very like Cowboys and Indians-esque, which is great.
Yeah, that's for the Rise of Ruins.
Yeah, and you got like a big building and half a building in the kill zone, and a couple of like little bits of wall section. But then in the kill team box with the models, you literally got like an L shape of a building, which wasn't very useful to anyone. So it just didn't really make sense unless you bought 2 of the kill zones and you bought both kill teams.
Yeah, it just makes a corner of a building basically, which is sort of okay, but it's not ideal. I keep looking at that Frontier kill zone because I really like the look of those buildings. It's more compact than the Sector Imperialis because they're basically 1 floor high. They're much more like Dan was saying, the old Cities of Death style. Like they're 3 inches tall, not 6 inches. So actually, I can pack them away literally in the kill team like core box set. So I could potentially pack away all my models and my board and my terrain in that one box, as opposed to the Sector Imperialis stuff. They're just too big to store anywhere.
Yeah, well, we bought one for the store for like when we have kill team events, and it's a lot more playable table than the kill team Cities of Death with the big buildings.
Is it because it's more line of sight blocking terrain?
Yeah, it's more. It's a lot more playable. It's like big square buildings, and I kind of feel like all kill teams should just come with shipping containers because then they would be usable on all boards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet the Death World one was the one that sold the least.
Yeah.
Which one was the one that sold the least, sorry?
The Death World one, which was all Ikea, Eldari terrain, which they could have sort of swung as a kind of Catachan jungle type thing. But yeah, it just seemed like that one would be the one. It's like the one terrain kit that everyone seems to universally hate.
Yeah. The new one they've done, the Sector, whatever, the holy place with the 2 statues. Yeah. That's actually quite good value because the only way you could get those statues otherwise was you bought the 60 quid. I think it was 60 quid chapel.
Yeah.
And then this comes with a set of ruins, which I think are about £25, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it comes with the ruin terrain, which previously was only available in the City Conquest, Urban Conquest, whatever it was, box set. So, and again, that was locked behind a paywall of, £80, £60, £40. I can't remember the exact price of it, but yeah, to get hold of the ruined bits of terrain along with a few ruins and these statues, I mean, you probably are talking all in with those bits and pieces. That's probably, that's got to be getting into the kind of 65, 70 quid mark in terms of terrain alone. So yeah, it does represent, that one also does represent a good value, although probably not as good value as some others.
Well, you can now buy that. The sort of scatter terrain elements of that come with the new kill teams that they've released.
Oh yeah, they have.
So the Thousand Suns and the Shooty Orcs.
The Shooty Orcs
and Death Guards.
Yeah.
I'm not massively keen on that kind of scatter terrain. Like Joe said, I'd much rather like 2 shipping containers than that scatter terrain. I think.
But again, I mean, it's nice. I mean, again, if you're going to do a kind of Cities of Death, or not Cities of Death, but if you're going to do a board built around a destroyed city, having this stuff is super useful. I've got 2 sets of it now because I picked up that sector, whatever we're calling it, the holy
Sector Sanctoris.
Yeah, Sector Sanctoris. Thank you. I picked up that, and I bought Urban Conquest before because I'm a lunatic, and I also bought the Cities of Death or City Ruins or whatever it's called table. The battle, whatever it's called, the Realm of Battle board. There we are. That's the words I couldn't find. So I am quite keen to put together a really cool kind of city fight board now because I've got lots of good terrain that can do that. But
because you've got one of the really cool things that came in the Urban Conquest one, which is the like shrine, and it's like, isn't it is it a severed hand holding a sword, or is it just a sword in like a little temple shrine? It's like almost like an objective marker.
That is a perfectly reasonable question that I will find the answer to. I haven't looked at Urban Conquest in a while.
You're like, I'm going to Google Urban Conquest.
Yeah, no, I can't remember this hand thing you're talking about. I mean, all it is the scatter terrain that you see in Kill Team now and the old objective markers. God, did I really pay that much money for this thing?
There is I'm just having a look at it now myself.
The Urban Conquest.
Yeah, you can see it very... sorry, go on, Joe.
I say the Urban Conquest was a great idea. Unfortunately, we don't live close enough to run a legitimate campaign.
Yeah. I think that is the problem, isn't it? I would be really keen on trying to run this campaign because apparently it cost me £60 for the privilege. God knows what was coming over me that day.
If you scroll through all the pictures, you can eventually see the objective markers, because one of them is the, well, not necessarily objective markers, but sort of stuff that you can fight over, because it's got the super old like electric fence, like shield generator, like posts, I guess.
Oh, those, yeah.
In that thing, you can see like a sword and like a severed bone hand in like a little sort of shrine. Is the only way I can describe it.
Okay.
Because that, plus there's like a little Mechanicum shield generator type thing, that's new. And then the crates and the some of the other bits are a bit generic. They clearly repurposed they've got like a medical servitor, which used to be with the objective set, but now it's got like little tracks rather than it just being on. Before it used to be on a really crappy stand.
Yeah.
So they redesigned that to be a bit different.
Is that entirely accurate? I'm just now looking at the objective markers. Oh, yeah, you are right, yeah. So he's not on a little stand anymore. They've put him on wheels.
Yeah, which is cool. But again, you make the very good point about how we don't live close enough to each other to do a campaign. And that's sort of the same reason behind Kill Team. It's like, I've still not done a campaign. And that feels like... It's the one thing that everyone said right at the beginning, that it was a bit underdeveloped, but at the same time, it's the way you get the most out of the game by like progressing your characters and them getting experience and stuff like that. And it doesn't have a facility, unlike Commandos and I think even Elites, where you can like pay points to upgrade your men. So in Commanders, you can basically say, this is my warlord guy, he's my commander, and actually I'm going to bump him up to like level 2 or 3. So he's already like experienced, and that obviously costs you so many points. It means you can then take certain like abilities and stratagems and stuff. And you can't do that in any way with your generic guys. So you can't play effectively a seasoned Kill Team straight off the bat. So rather than just going, instead of paying 100 points, you go, let's pay 150, and that gives us a 50 points extra to level up a couple of our guys, which is sort of how a lot of people do things like Blood Bowl. If they're just doing a one-off, you might just go, because there are sort of rules and ways of paying for stats. But I think that all of that, in terms of Blood Bowl, is all a bit unofficial. So maybe someone's done something similar for Kill Team, but I haven't seen anything around before.
Kill Team does have, if you refer to any of the commanders, there are points associated to higher level variants of said characters. So
yes, but just for the character, not for your generic guys though.
No, but then your generic guys never leveled up or gained skills anyway. I don't think it was only ever.
Well, they
leaders.
do. Yeah, oh, yeah. So yeah, your specialists can level up, and then
Oh, sorry, yeah, specialists can. Yeah, sorry, yes.
and then everyone else can level up, but they level up as like a little band. So it's all the people that are in the same data sheet level up as a group together. So if you've got several data sheets, you can specialize your team much more than if, say, you take just Chaos Cultists, because all your Chaos Cultists then get lumped together in one big data sheet. So they all level up together. So if you wanted to, which is what I want to do, go, okay, half of my Chaos Cultists are close combat specialists, and the other half are going to be like shooty specialists with auto guns. And actually, they all level up together. So if I get one of the, so if you get the like +1 to your weapon skill, it's like great. My shooty guys don't really benefit from that, and vice versa. So, you know, there are some sort of flaws in that, but that's just due to how I want to like customize my kill team.
Yeah.
And I wish there was just a bit more sort of a generic. I think what I want to do is something a bit more like Necromunda, where I can personalize my team completely and just have some generic war gear, and I can just pick and choose what everything has.
Yeah.
Whereas Kill Team's very prescriptive, and it's based around these models exist, and what you see on them, they have as war gear that you can take. If you want to convert and customize it, there's not much point, because you can't give them guns that they can't possibly take.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, now that Kill Team Elite exists and Commander and Arena, I mean, obviously we were talking about definitely getting together and, you know, rekindling our enthusiasm for Kill Team and trying to play a few more Kill Team games. You know, are you going to stick with your Chaosy stuff, Phil? I mean, Joe, what sort of things are you considering? What's the general vibe in terms of what Kill Teams people are looking at the moment? Are you even considering building some Kill Teams? I mean, Joe, you're in the habit of, you know, fluttering around different hobby projects all the time. Are you keen to Kill Team?
Well, I'm going to be. I definitely want to play Kill Team, because I've got. It's a good inspiration to get my Dark Eldar painted. So yeah, I mean, I can make a nice, cool mix of Cabrite warriors, witches, and mandrakes now, which is quite cool, because I found it really weird that mandrakes weren't in it originally, because they're like the prime stealth unit for Dark Eldar, and they're the kind of unit that would be going out doing these kind of missions. So now I can use them. It's a reason to get them painted.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really interested now in, you know, trying to do some Deathwing specifically. I really like the idea of. I've always liked Deathwing. Anyone who's gone back and listened to me rant about, you know, Terminators and so on, Deathwing have always been something that I've really liked in the lore and collecting and so on. So I've always dabbled with having Deathwing in my collection. The only problem is with Deathwing is they're not very good in the game at the moment and haven't been for an awfully long time.
But they might be good in Kill Team, though.
Well, exactly, and that, you know, whether they are or not, it's so. You know, again, I'm not really overly bothered. I just like the idea of the fact that actually it gives me an excuse to finish painting up a few more Deathwing and actually trying it out. So I think my current idea around Kill Team is to do a Deathwing Kill Team. I have a few painted, assembled ones, and I still have a box of unopened Deathwing that will be coming out to play ever so soon. So
cool. How many Terminators can you get in a 100-point Kill Team, or is Elites like more like 150 or something?
Well, so the way Elites work is there's two different points values that fluctuate between match play missions. Now, obviously, that only matters if you're looking at match play missions, but obviously, I imagine the majority of people will consider that the way to play. So sometimes you have a 200-point limit, and sometimes you have a 125-point limit. On a 125-point limit, you can get about 4 Terminators, and that's a decent variety. So that would be a leader, so a Terminator Sergeant. Then you would be... the list I put together was Terminator Sergeant with Power Sword and Storm Bolter, a Terminator Specialist, which was a combat specialist with 2 Lightning Claws, and then there was a Terminator Gunner Specialist with an Assault Cannon And then there was a regular Terminator as just a regular entry with a power fist and a thing. And I think that came to like 124 points, I believe.
Oh, how many Terminators is that in total? Was it
4.
4? Jeez, that's quite a lot still. Even for Kill Team, that still feels like quite a lot of Terminators. I mean, because like my army is almost like 15 models, 100 points. So I guess I could cram in some extra things.
Well, I mean, you obviously get access to additional elites as well, though, right? And again, I mean, obviously, you know, Chaos Space Marines have access to Chaos Space Marine Terminators, and you have access to Greater Possessed, and you have access to Chaos Lord in Terminator armor, or Khorne Berserkers, or things of that nature.
Yeah, so originally I was playing my Apostles as Chaos Space Marines, but just running them all as cultists. But that didn't really give me the flavour of the characters and the models that I wanted to run, because some, like I said, want to be really good at close combat. So I've actually started to run them as Gene Stealer cults, because actually the generic guys all have auto guns anyway, so there's quite a lot of similarities. And then I want to say the metamorphs are the like super close combat-y ones. So they're the ones that are gonna be my specialist close combat unit. So I've done a few conversions. One of them's got a flaming sword, and then the other one's got like a flail, like a ball on the end of a chain, which is actually a Cadian infantryman, and a skull head in his helmet attached to the end that he's like whipping around his body. So they're going to be the metamorphs, and then the aberrants. I've been working on converting up 2 chaos. I think they were the Blight Lords models, like the one that people tend to famously convert for Golden Team, and so I've been converting those 2 up as to be like these just 2 brutish, big humanoid things, and I was going to run those as aberrants, and it meant I could also, if I get commandos, I keep saying commanders, then I could actually, I guess, run my my Thalos character, who I always envisage being a psychic, as running him as a Magos or some kind of different Gene Stealer cult leader to give him some abilities. So the narrative that I've created around my army can now sort of be a bit more closely matched to the rules. So I think that's the way I'll be going forward. So I don't know what Gene Stealer cult get in terms of elites. It'd be interesting to see what they get, and if they can marry up to anything that I've got.
You get to take the Kellamorph, the guy with all the pistols. You could make like some kind of like gunslinger.
Oh, I've already got a guy with 2 guns. What was his name? It was like Zaprath or something. Zap the Perfect or something. Something like that. Yeah, he was a guy that was running that had 2 pistols, and I always said, there are no 2 pistols for Chaos Cultists, so it's a bit of a waste. So maybe I could turn him into that basically, because he would look quite good.
Yeah.
No, he would do. I think the thing is as well, I mean, you get access to, so they've got a lot of their sort of named characters, assassin-y things as well, or not named characters, but they got access to their assassins and their other bits and pieces. It's a good selection on the Gene Stealer cult side of things. I mean, they've even actually gone so far as to put like 1 or 2 named characters into elites, which is quite awesome. So you can get Dark Strider. Dark Strider's in there now. Which is interesting. So Dark Strider is
because they did the famous. Sorry, carry on. I don't want to talk over you.
No, please talk over me, man.
No, I was going to say the famous Katachan guy.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Joe. Did you say something there? I've talked over you. Then.
Sly Marbo.
Yes, Sly Margo. Sly Marbo is in there.
Illic Nightspear, he's made it in.
Yeah, Illic Nightspear made it in, which makes sense. I mean, obviously he's out and about all the time trying to, do his thing. I mean, there weren't many others beyond those ones, I don't think. I can't think of too many others. I mean, Sly Marbo being in there is a big win for Sly Marbo, right? I mean, definitely something cool to see. No Trajan Valores, though, unfortunately, or things of that nature. But you can take a shield captain. You could have a level 1 shield captain for 118 points which, if you give him a Storm Shield, will go up to a glorious 133 points. And a Guardian Spear is 0. If you want to give him the old knifey, the Misericordia, then it's an extra 2 points. I never understand why Games Workshop seem to constantly think the Misericordia is actually worth paying the points for. They're always like, ooh, 4 points extra in normal 40k gets you this. It's like, why would I take that? I'm always going to use the Guardian Spear. I have no idea why you're making me pay 4 points for this pointless weapon. But there you go. 40k, innit? Fun. But, yeah, no, look, I mean, in closing on the topic of Kill Team, I mean, obviously, you know, we're really impressed, or I'm really impressed anyway, with how they've managed to maintain and keep things going with this release. I think, you know, again, drip feeding out content the way they have and keeping it interesting is really great. You know, I definitely really enjoy all the expansions and additions to the game and find it to be something that really kind of offers something different. It's a great entry point for new players, and it's a great kind of supplementary experience to the overall 40k thing, or, you know, game, I suppose. So yeah, no, genuinely speaking, I'm really happy with where they're up to with it. I'm looking forward to playing more of it and seeing how it evolves going forwards. And I'm also really keen to see what they do to make that thing they're doing for Age of Sigmar with Chaos Champions and things. Warcry, that's it. I'm really interested to see what that becomes in a way, because that's super interesting as well, and it's obviously the same theme.
Yeah, I guess everyone's assuming it's Kill Team for Age of Sigmar, but no one actually knows. Is it going to be more campaign, or maybe it's going to be more like Necromunda? So sort of more driven in terms of like a narrative, or is it going to be like the old Wartime, which is sort of what a lot of people might want it to be? Yeah, I think that'd be something I could quite easily get into in terms of the scenery looks great, the model count is just, you're just buying a team, and it seems like with that it is a bit more almost like Shadespire, like you buy these miniatures, each miniature probably has a name and an ability. Like, I don't know how much customization there's going to be. It sort of feels like you buy these models and that's it. Whereas with Kill Team, it's like you can build your models how you want them to look different, and you can equip it in a different way. So, but the downside is, yeah, it's another thing to play, more rules to learn, more like if you want to get into it, you've got to buy really all the terrain to do it justice. And it's something I probably don't have the time to play, because like I said, don't really get much time to play Kill Team as it is. There's just too many systems, but I would love to give it a go, even if it's just a one-off playing around someone's house.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But on the topic of Kill Team, Phil, you overall satisfied, happy, and on board with it and its future?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when with elites and commanders, I sort of felt like it's going in a way that it's sort of like going away from the concept of a kill team that's quite small. It feels like you're getting a bit of creep in terms of the size and scope of your missions, or not necessarily missions, just the size of your team. I prefer the sort of smaller rookies as opposed to things like Terminators, but I can see why people would like it, so I don't have a problem with it. I do want to know where it's going to go. It would be nice to see some of those kill zones come back, or do variations on those bundles. So some things we haven't said, like it's really cool that all the kill zones stick together. Well, like, so there's the generic city ruin, which came on like the main box game, and then every other kill zone since then has an alternative to, like, so one side is the sector frontis, for example, and then you flip it over and it's the city board, and that then joins onto your pre-existing city boards if you've been collecting them, so you can make bigger, like, multiplayer maps. So that's all cool. It's nice to see that they do stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. In terms of gameplay, my only criticism is I think there's too many stratagems, and it's quite hard to keep hold of all the stratagems and the abilities, because each specialist has a different set of stratagems specific to them. So it's quite a lot to keep a hold of mentally. And I think if you just played it regularly, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. But half the time I tend to forget about those stratagems and I just use some of the generic ones.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you, Joe, Kill Team?
I really like it. I'd like to see something like the Blood Bowl Almanac get released at some point that has all the rules in it, so you don't have to carry around 4 or 5 books. But no, I'm happy with it. It's a good lunchtime kind of game as well. If you're one of those lucky people that has like an hour for lunch, you can get a game in. It means that like you can get 2 or 3 games of 40k in a week, opposed to having one game every 2 or 3 weeks of like a big 40k full size.
But then, Joe, you have to admit in your place of work that you're a big 40k fanboy. I mean, most people who are known by their, colleagues as being such, but, it's always a risk, isn't it, They might bully you. They might look at you and tease you for your silly toy soldiers.
So everyone I work with that would play, or that I work with, all play 40k. I've become that weird guy at work that wants to play bolt action all the time. And
Joe, you're not allowed to talk about bolt action here. This is a Warhammer 40,000 and maybe Games Workshop podcast. We're not talking about other systems.
I know. I'm just saying, I get bullied for doing reenactment games now. I'm getting to that age.
As you should be, Joe. Don't be deserting... Well, I can't even speak. Don't be deserting the one true tabletop war game.
Yeah. Soon I'll be doing Hornby in my loft.
It's the Joe heresy is what it is. You're going to turn us against each other and destroy what beautiful things we've built together.
I know.
You're going to be all covered in sort of face paint and get into weird, crazy music and get all kind of decadent and over the top like Fulgrim. You're going to go all terribly wrong.
Yeah, I'll be one of those people that wears a waistcoat everywhere for no reason.
Actually, now that you mention it, I think you would suit a waistcoat.
I don't know. That would just force me down the road.
Exactly. It's all gone terribly wrong. Oh, don't say that. But there you go. So yeah, Kill Team in essence, lots and lots of new stuff to absorb and get your head round. It's been an interesting 10, 11 months since that thing came out. Long may it continue, I'd say. It's all very good. Shall we transition to the next section with the traditional transitional noise?
Yeah, go for it.
You duty.
All right, then. Hopefully it's not the quiz, otherwise this whole thing's going to seem a bit mad as the quiz music begins in the background. But I'm going to sort of say it could be the quiz and then not do the transitional noise, I guess, because that's not how it works. But transitional noise! Woo!
And that concludes episode 22 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast. Did we all have a good time?
The best of times, Joe. Whenever I'm spending time talking small toy soldiers with you and Phil are the best times in my otherwise bleak existence.
Yeah, it was all right for me as well.
Yeah, it was all right. It'll do. It'll do.
Okay, fine. I guess that's it then. On that bum note,
Joe, you're so bad at this.
I don't know.
Come on, you got to move into the. You got to say thank you for everyone to listening, and then maybe plug our Instagrams and Facebooks and talk about like and subscribe and comment and stuff. Come on, Joe, keep it going, buddy.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for the music and the songs we're singing. Thank you for going on to our Facebook right now, this second, and
what's the URL,
us.
Joe?
It is the numbers. The http:// facebook.co.uk or .com.
It's .com, yeah.
Yeah. And then just
it's just Lookout Sir, Joe. That's all it is. Search Lookout Sir on Facebook and you'll find your way in.
Yeah. And there's our beautiful picture with the man with his head exploding.
Yep.
And it's Lookout Sir in black writing.
Mm-hmm.
And look out in black writing and then Sir in red writing.
There you go.
Confused. And we are also on the Instagrams.
Yeah.
Phil's got his own one, but we don't really care about that. He's got enough followers. I've got my own one, just subtle painting. Go on and follow that.
Are we genuinely not plugging Phil's Beyond the Tabletop one now, Joe? Are you really going to go that far?
Love. He's just hoovering up people. Well, he's way better at the social medias and all that.
Do you know what? If you actually posted on our Lookout Sir one, maybe you could plug your own Instagram at the same time.
That's sick burn there, Phil. But you are correct.
We had a good conversation about this, me and Joe, where I was saying to him, all you got to do, mate, all you got to do is post like once a day. You get home at night, just post something. Any old thing. Something's happened. Oh, what's this? Hey, check out this thing I'm painting. You know, something along those lines. It's not interested, is he? Not interested.
It's just a busy man. Important things to do when I get home.
All right, well, there you go. I'm not arguing with that. I'm just simply saying, you know, I do the recording, the editing stuff, and putting this all together and all that stuff. And Phil makes all the artwork, and you know, legitimizes us with his actual following that at least gives us half a chance. And you're supposed to be the social media man.
I am terrible at it, and I apologise to the people.
Well, the people don't know you're terrible at it because none of them are looking at you.
Yeah, they won't be aware, but now they are aware. Now we've spoken it out loud.
That's true. Not for the first time as well. And obviously this is at the outro segment, which, to be honest with you, based on the statistics, very, very few people are listening to. So, I wouldn't worry too much.
So our dedicated 3 listeners
at this stage, at least. And to be fair, it's more like 200 listeners make it to this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they've got that kind of staying power. Because even I drift off halfway through.
Well, you never even listen to the thing. You're even worse.
Yeah. Well, just sometimes your voice sounds different, doesn't it? Like, I think I sound awful.
Well, that's what you sound like, Joe. I hate to break it to you, mate. This is your voice.
Yeah, but it's like, say when you're like on camera, the camera adds like £20. I feel like the same thing happens to talk, adds £20 to my voice.
That's true. Anyway, there you go. So, you know, what you meant to say is, Joe, is thanks very much to everyone for listening and supporting the podcast. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook and so on. And then that's pretty much it, Joe. So you just got to do the whole say goodbye thing now. And then I guess that'll pretty much conclude episode 22 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast.
I've got that. Cool. Say goodbye, then.
Well, you want me to say goodbye?
I want you to say goodbye.
But you...
And then I want Phil to say goodbye, and then I'll say goodbye.
All right. Well, bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.
And then Phil, say goodbye.
Bye.
The only thing worse than Joe's sort of, lack of ability at this closing segment is Phil's complete lack of enthusiasm. It's like, no, I'm so checked out now. Let's just go home.
And then goodbye from me. I hope you all sleep well and drive safe and have good luck.
There you go. Those 3 elements are not necessarily combined. Don't sleep well while driving.
Yeah, don't do those 3 things at the same time. Although, if you did all 3 things at the same time, you would be incredibly lucky, especially if you got to your destination. Yeah,
if you had to do any 2 of those things together, I guess you'd want every one of them to have a combination of luck, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Joe, were you going to say something else?
Goodbye.
There we go.